Years ago, it wasn't uncommon for me to put in excess of 500 miles into a running shoe. Over the past 2 or 3 years, I've reduced that down to around 300 miles, more so from insurance purposes so that I don't take a shoe to the point where they might start to cause me an injury. However, in the last 12 to 18 months, I've noticed a decline in performance once again, and it all started back earlier in the year with the Asics Nova Blast version 5. One of my favourite model lines over the years started to lose its shine in version 4 for me, so when the 5 came out, the changes got me very excited and I started logging plenty of miles. However, around the 150 mile mark, it just started to go a little bit flat, and by 200 miles, the midsole just felt like a block of rubber. It really was uncomfortable to run on. I pushed it up to 300 miles just to see if anything changed, but the damage has already been done, and that 200 to 300 mile mark was very unpleasant. Fast forward to this year, and again, the Rebel version 5 up there you can see has again got itself to 200 miles, but really flattened out much quicker than the Nova Blast. Once again, a nice soft midsole compound has lost its bounce once again. In fact, to be honest with you, it didn't really have too much bounce in the beginning. It had a little bit of something, but what was there disappeared after around 50 miles. And by 100 miles, I noticed that it was very much a mushy type of midsole. And by 200 miles, it was really unenjoyable to run in. Interestingly, and just as a side note, the Mizuno Neo Vista was another one that just kind of went a little bit funny on me around about the 100 mile mark. I know a lot of people love this shoe. For me, it was kind of an okay shoe. It did a good job at steady long runs, but to be honest with you, I felt like there was so much stack there that it meant that even if it did flatten out, there was still so much underfoot that it still gave you a little bit of bounce. However, I must say it didn't feel quite the same at 100 miles as it did at 0. And although I haven't put quite the miles in all of the shoes that I test, there are some that I end up putting a lot more in than others, maybe just because they work for me a little bit better. I have tested a lot of other softer midsole shoes and tend to find that those are the ones that I don't quite get on with as much as the harder midsole foams. That, coupled with the fact that you guys are regularly telling me in the comments about certain shoes flattening out relatively quickly, has got me to wondering if softer midsoles really aren't all they're cracked up to be. Now, I'd love to hear from you guys who are a little bit more switched on about this sort of stuff. Obviously, I have a decent understanding of midsole compounds and how they're used and the type of compounds that are going into each individual shoe, and I pay attention to which shoes have what type of compound in them. And interestingly, the ones that have always worked for me a little bit more than others, and maybe it's because I'm a heavier runner, are the slightly more firmer midsoles. Now, of course, with a lot of people, when the super shoe revolution really kicked off, Vaporflies were really the thing that helped me a lot. But one of my favourite super shoes over recent years has been the Saucony Endorphin Elite version 1. That was a slightly firmer midsole, but again, that seemed to work so well for me. The On Cloud Boom Echo 3, again, I never raced in it, but from a training perspective, when I was using it a lot, it was an absolutely phenomenal shoe. Or more recently, the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which I wouldn't say is the softest shoe in the world, but it's certainly resilient. That shoe's got such good rebound qualities from the midsole foam. It's absolutely brilliant. And I know that's an TPU compound, so again, this puts that piece of the puzzle together for me. But either way, here are 3 reasons why I'm wondering if the softer midsoles are just not working for me, and maybe not for you guys as well. Number 1, this is the On Cloud Surfer 2. I've just got this to 200 miles, and it is night and day comparison between this and the Rebel version 3. I quite happily take this thing to 200 miles, don't get me wrong. At 200 miles, I am starting to feel a little bit different. This was never the most responsive foam. In fact, it was quite a firm foam, but again, it did the job for me. It didn't mush underfoot, and it did give me a little bit of something back, and it's always been an extremely enjoyable ride. In fact, actually, with this one in particular, it's the first On shoe where they've really dialed in that upper nicely, so it's just a good all-round fitting shoe. Bit of a surprise package for me, but once again, a firmer midsole foam that is doing really well, holding up nicely visually, also looking really good as well. It's not quite that shade of white that it was when it was out of the box, but after 200 miles, this thing's done really well, and as I said, once again, it is that firmer midsole foam. Number 2, Brooks performance shoes. Don't get me wrong, I know Brooks in the running space can get a bit of a rough ride from a lot of people, not producing the most exciting shoes out there, but I've got to say, from back in the Hyperion Tempo days, they have been a staple in my lineup. I've had the Hyperion Tempo, 2 pairs of those, the Hyperion Max, 2 pairs of those, had the Hyperion Max 2, the Hyperion 2, which is what this one is here, and I have never had an issue with getting 300 miles out of this shoe. I think this one got up to about 150 before other shoes came into the rotation I started testing, and this showed absolutely no signs of a deterioration, and never did I have an issue with Brooks, the Hyperion Max. I got 400 out of each of those shoes, and this midsole compound is nitrogen infused. It's not the standard EVA stuff, so it is a little bit firmer. I know that Brooks have now evolved and moving their midsole compounds on just like a lot of other brands, but again, even in the more recent shoes I've tested, durability is just so much better better than some of the softer stuff. And finally, Adidas shoes, Light Strike Pro, their midsole foam. Again, it is on the firmer end of the spectrum. I haven't tested the Pro 4. I know a lot of you guys say it's a little bit softer, so don't get me wrong, I can't comment on that. This is the Pro 3, this is the Evo. The Evo had 2 pairs of, got over 300 miles out of the first one, nearly 300 miles out of the second one. The Pro 3 has been a staple in my running shoe rotation for a couple of years now. This is actually a fresh pair. This can be my racing pair for my marathon. And again, I'm wearing a pair of these in all of my sessions at the moment for marathon training, and I can get 500 miles out of these, no problem at all. And again, as a side note with Adidas, I've got the Adios 9, that's up and over 150 miles, and comparing that to other lower stack shoes like the Streak Fly, this thing is lasting really well, still feels really good, showing no signs of wearing down. And again, I feel confident in that midsole that it's going to last me a long time. And actually, I could throw in a fourth point with the Puma racing shoes that I've been using. As I said, I've got the new Farstar Nitro Elite 3, haven't put many miles in that, that's a bit softer. However, the Deviate Nitro Elite 3, I know that uses a TPU based midsole. That coupled with the new Velocity Nitro 4, which is a daily trainer, again, I believe that's got TPU in it as well. And speaking of which, TPU seems to be the new material that's being used by a lot of companies. Asics are now starting to use it as well. We're seeing the durability benefits of that midsole compound across the industry. So I personally have seen a pattern in the softer midsoles not being quite as good for me, but I also do wonder if companies are now starting to get a little bit greedy. I'll be careful what I say, but I'm starting to see a lot of companies have such a range of shoes out there. They're almost feeling like you want to buy each and every one, so you've got one of their shoes for the specific purpose and making sure that you've got a whole lineup of their rotation. I know a lot of brands do it, so I'm not singling anyone out, but of course that does make you wonder if there is an intentional decrease in performance or longevity, I should say, in some of these midsoles. So what I'd love to see is a lot of brands standing up and changing some of their midsole compounds so that it is more durable, like some of the brands that I've mentioned already in this video. Because from a consumer perspective, it's very frustrating when you do invest your money and you're only getting a couple of 100 miles out of a shoe where it feels decent. And I say that being generous. I don't actually think I got 200 miles out of either of these two feeling good. This one was more around 150 and this one really wasn't even at 100. And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic as well. I'm throwing it out for discussion. This is one of those videos where I expect to get a fair few opinions out there, and that is welcomed. I'd love to hear, because I have heard some of your frustrations in some of my videos over the past year. When we're talking about durability of running shoes, it's really important to be able to voice those. And I think from my perspective, it's definitely a pattern that I'm noticing as well, especially, as I said, I'm not anti-soft midsoles, don't get me wrong. I've just always found that firmer midsoles work for me as a bigger runner. I know that also shoes scale up badly. Some of them do anyway. So some shoes that will work for a lot of you in a smaller size will not work for me in a bigger size, and thankfully Tim Gross is out there proving that at the moment with some of the Nike shoes that he's testing, which is why I wouldn't touch any of those with a barge pole. So yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this topic down in the comments below. And of course, what shoes have lasted you the longest? Which ones would you recommend to people out there that are struggling to find a shoe that's durable? And what I make sure I do, guys, is to leave 2 videos on screen now. This one up here is the Rebel version 5 after 200 miles. So if you missed that latest video where I talk about the disappointment of this shoe, then check that one out. But if you're looking for something a bit more durable, check out this video down here. These are my most durable shoes of 2025 so far. Check that one out, and I'll see you guys over on one of those.